Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the latest edition of Tuesdays with Turbo. That's actually on Tuesday this week. Go figure. But welcome everyone. Hope everyone's having a great week. The weather outside looks to be kind of blustery, but we're going to get some warmer weather here the next couple days. So get out and enjoy it, because we might not see the temperatures like this again for quite some time. But that aside, I just want to take a quick second to welcome everyone and introduce myself. My name is Ryan Turbo Jackson. I am your insurance resource. And in videos like this, I like to break down different policies, coverages, because let's be honest, insurance is its own language. So let me help you. And if you've been following me for the last handful of weeks, we've done homeowners insurance 101. We've done auto insurance 101. So I kind of figured we, like the description says, take a little journey off the beaten path and let's talk about some landlord policies. We're going to discuss about what makes them different than a regular homeowner's policy. Do you need them? What type of different coverages there are, and why exactly they are important. Now you might be saying to yourself, well, Ryan, I don't own any rental properties, so this video really doesn't pertain to me. And you might be right for right now, but you never know what the future holds. So kind of stay locked in, and if nothing else, go ahead and share this on your timeline, because I guarantee there's someone on your timeline that does own rental properties, and this might be a huge help to them. So with that being said, let's get started. Like I said, this is just to kind of give you a quick background here. Different companies call these policies different things. Pretty much every insurance company calls a homeowner's policy a homeowner's policy. They all call an auto policy an auto policy. But when it comes to rentals, in particular, when I used to work for Allstate, they call them landlord policies. And now that I've been working in the independent realm, they refer to them as dwelling fires. So what exactly is a dwelling fire? Well, let's get into that. What is a dwelling fire? Now you might be saying to yourself, well, when I purchase a policy, Ryan, I want it to cover more than just fire. Well, you are 100% correct. And why the insurance industry calls them dwelling fires, I'm not really sure. But they have the coverages are the same on the dwelling as a regular home policy. It covers weather, it covers fire, it covers vandalism. All of the big things that you really want in a policy to cover the structure. So, like I said, dwelling fire, I really don't know, because I get that question a lot when it comes to rentals. And I always have to explain it. This is just an insurance term. The coverages are way more broad than just fire. So, a dwelling fire, landlord policy, rental policy. The only thing with rental policy is don't get it confused with renter's insurance, because we'll get into the differences in that here in a little bit. But a dwelling fire is just it's a home that you own that you don't live in. Now, one of the big questions is, well, I mean, before I put the cart before the horse here, so I own my home. I own another piece of property that I rent out to someone. I am their landlord, which is where the landlord policy comes from. But obviously there's money changing hands, there's rents being exchanged, but we do get the occasional, well, I purchased a home near campus because it's cheaper to do that than to pay room and board at the university, or even for my child to rent an apartment. There isn't any rents exchanging hands. Do I really need a rental or landlord or dwelling fire policy? And the answer is yes, because you yourself as the owner are not living there. And we get questions too, well, can I just have it as a secondary or seasonal? And the answer is no, because there's someone other than you living there full time. So whether there's rents being exchanged or not, it is, if you own a home that you do not live in, then it needs to be covered under a dwelling fire policy. So, and there's other uses for a dwelling fire policy, but this is the main one, where it's a home that you own that you do not live in. And when it comes to seasonal or secondary, we've talked about that too, where you live in it only part-time, whether it's seasonal where you live in the summer, or secondary where you kind of spend half and half, half the time at your primary home, half the time at your seasonal home. or secondary home, excuse me. So like I said, keep in mind, dwelling fires are for homes you own that you do not live in. So let's get into the next one here. How is that different than a home policy? Well, the main difference is, your home policy is constructed of coverages that cover the dwelling, cover your personal property, cover your liability, other structures, and loss of use. Those are the big ones. Okay, every home policy has those. When it comes to a dwelling fire, we have liability coverage and we have coverage for the dwelling. Now, there is no personal property coverage, and it also includes some loss of rents and some other personal injury coverage, but there is no personal property coverage on this policy, which is the main difference between a dwelling fire and a home policy, as opposed, not taking into consideration the occupancy, but there's no personal property. Why is it? There's some that can include a little bit of personal property. Say for instance that you own a home and it has a shed that you keep your lawnmower and other groundskeeping goods there. You lock it up. You're the only one that has access to it. We can add that on there too, because it is your personal property, but it's not really designed or intended to have the same personal property coverage as your home policy. Because if it's your stuff inside, the likelihood of you living there goes up. So then we'd be looking at a secondary or seasonal, as compared to a home that you purchased that you intend for someone else to live in. So that's the main difference when it comes to the general policy, is there isn't any personal property coverage. So let's see here. What's the next one? Well, what coverages do you need? I kind of listed them out. You want coverage for the dwelling. Now this is another difference between a home policy and a dwelling fire. Is with a dwelling fire, we have many more options to cover that home. We can do guaranteed replacement cost by all means, or there are some folks, and that I've have it kind of either way here with my book of business, is I have investors that purchase homes that, let's say, that are at public auction, and they scoop up the house for $50,000, and they put an extra $25,000 into the home, and they're completely fine with just recouping their money back if there is a total loss. Now, this is something that I explained to the client. It's like, hey, if you're looking to rebuild this home, you're only going to get, $75,000. You're not going to get replacement cost. And a lot of times they're completely fine with just getting their investment back. I usually always recommend, or at least give them quotes for a replacement cost policy, just because it is the far superior product. But investors are very different, when it comes to that. So like I said, some of them just want their money back. Some of them are like, okay, this is a long-term thing. This is a great location, and if you have if they've taken out any loans or anything to cover the purchase of the house, then the bank's going to want, or the lender's going to want guaranteed replacement costs. So it's kind of up in the air a little bit. So we've got the dwelling covered. That's number one. Number two is your liability, and you've heard me go on and on about having high liability limits on your home policy. Well, if you think about it this way, you own the home, you own the land, and the possibility of someone, you obviously can control who lives there, but you can't control who goes in and out of the house. So the liability risk increases when you have a property like that. It's also a property that you're not at on a day in and day out basis. So the likelihood of something happening might very possibly would increase. So have at least what your home policy is. We've talked at great lengths. When I write new business, I always put at least $500,000 worth of liability coverage on every home policy. I would actually recommend going higher than that, or putting this type of policy under your umbrella, which we've talked about at great lengths as well. Kind of see where this is going. Everything kind of all wraps up together. So have a higher, or at least uh, have your liability at least what your home policy is, or higher. And always, if you do have an umbrella, make sure that this dwelling fire policy goes underneath that. Other coverages, like we talked about, loss of rents, always included. Make sure that it does have personal injury coverage, and if it is a house that, or a, yeah, or a dwelling, I guess you could say, um, there are other endorsements that you can put on, like water backup, increased cost endorsement, which we've talked about at great lengths. So there are other coverages that you can add to bump up this. But and like I said, if there's any of your personal property that's on the property, make sure you add that too. Make sure you add that too. So let's go to the next one here. Are dwelling fire policies only for large property owners? And the answer is no. No, not at all. Not at all. If you own just your home and one rental property, always highly recommend having a policy on that investment, because let's be honest, it is an investment, whether you've purchased it or you inherited it, or however the situation is, it does have some monetary value. So why not get it covered to make sure that, especially with the wild weather we've had here lately, knock on wood, it's been kind of quiet, but this summer, very wild. Let's make sure that investment's taken care of. Let's make sure that it's covered the way it should be, and the way that you want it to be. So regardless if you own one, if you own 10, if you own 20, let's make sure they're all taken care of. Let's make sure they're all taken care of. So, like I said, and one would think it's more important when you have multiple to make sure they're all covered, but in actuality, if you only have one, the likelihood of you having the money to actually repair it yourself probably isn't as great as someone who has a lot more fluid capital that can, kind of take a higher risk because they have more money to back it up. So kind of think about it that way. Next one is a dwelling fire necessary? By all means, it's necessary. And like I said, not only to cover the dwelling, but to cover your liability. And I will continue to keep harping on liability, because that coverage is very, very inexpensive, but can mean a whole lot when something happens. Remember, liability equals lawsuit. Kind of keep those two, kind of earmarked in your mind. And if you have $100,000 worth of liability, don't know if you've been to court or anything lately, or had to involve a lawyer with anything. $100,000 is not going to get you very far. So being skimpy at the beginning can cause you many dollars towards the end of things if something does happen. So kind of keep that in mind moving forward. And like I said, the intention of this policy is not only to protect your investment, but to protect you. And like I said, when it comes to, you yourself are screening, at least I hope you are, screening your tenants, making sure that they're a good fit for you, your situation, their situation, and the home itself. You can't control a lot. The things you can control at your own house are very, very. You can control more at your house than you can at that house. Let's put it that way. So the unknowns to me would far outweigh the cost of something like this. So is it necessary? Yes. So not, like I said, not only to protect your investment, but to protect you and your situation. So we kind of talked about your tenants. Now, if there isn't any personal property, if there isn't any personal property on your policy, then where does that coverage come from when it comes to your tenants? Well, they would need a renter's policy. And this is something as a landlord I highly suggest, is that require renter's insurance for all of your tenants. Now, you might be saying, well, Ryan, how can I do that? Put it in the lease agreement. By all means, put it in the lease agreement. I work with many investors that have many properties, and it's a very common practice. And that way, if something does happen, your tenants have liability coverage and coverage for their personal property if something were to happen. So it would go to that, and then any of the liability that they could come after you as well. But there's one more step that they have to take in order to get to you is through your tenants. So it's kind of a COA type of thing for you, as well as make sure that if there is a total loss, or if there is a loss, that your clients, or your tenants aren't out high and dry when it comes to their stuff. So it's a win-win all the way around, all the way around. So that kind of wraps up this week's little spiel here about dwelling fires and about landlord policies. And I hope that it's always hard to kind of drive home the fact that a dwelling fire policy covers more than just fire. So keep that in mind when you see that. Be like, okay, I remember Ryan saying that there's way more coverage than just fire. And believe me, if you see that and you think that initially, you're not the only one, because it's something that I deal with on a daily basis, and it's one of those misconceptions that I wish that it could, instead of being an insurance ease, would just be common language. Let's put it that way. But I'm sure there's someone that's way smarter that came up with the name, and they actually have a very good reason. I can tell you that reason. So if you guys else have any other questions, please feel free to go ahead and drop me a comment right on this video. Shoot me a Facebook message. Here's my office number as well as my direct email. I am happy to not only answer questions, but look at your current policies. Even if you aren't an Abbott and Powers client, I'm always happy to take a peek and give suggestions or give quotes from the companies that I work with to see if we might be a better fit for you. So keep that in mind, everyone. Have a great week, and I will see you next time.